is the one taught by people who say, and this is the educator saying this, once you start eating an all raw fruit and vegetable diet, you don't have to be concerned about nutrition. Now that's a quote from a popular raw vegan educator. The problem with that quote is it isn't true. It was true 50,000 years ago. It's just not true today because of where we get our food from today. Where we get it from today, most of us, is way different than where we got it 50,000 years ago. So if you end up believing that, and that implies you don't need any kind of nutritional supplementation, and these folks will usually, if you ask them specifically about nutritional supplementation, they will say, no, A, not necessary, B, it's bad for you, so, and you don't need it, so why even discuss it? But that's been a cause of a lot of people's failings. And now, not to get into the weeds, this is just before the weeds begin. There's two classifications of nutrients. There's food-provided nutrients and non-food provided nutrients. Okay, I think we can all figure that out. The food-provided nutrients, there are many, many dozens, vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients, etc. The non-food provided nutrients, I think if I asked people and they gave a few minutes to think about it, they would say, well, vitamin D, that comes from the sun, and B12, maybe they know our bodies are supposed to make that, but again, it's not supposed to come from food. So there's a few of the non-food provided nutrients. And a lot of raw vegan educators are teaching about food and diet and the foods we should be eating. They don't even bother touching upon vitamin D and B12. Now think about that, Dave. You're going from the typical Western diet where you had been eating a lot of foods that were fortified with D and B12, and now you're not eating that crap anymore, but it was fortified, but now you're not eating those foods anymore. Now you're eating foods that provide zero B12 and zero vitamin D. So what happens if you're not taught to now start paying attention to those two very, very important nutrients, then you become deficient in them. And I've known people who have basically, raw vegans, died because they weren't paying attention to D and B12 because they simply weren't taught about it. B12 gets sprayed on cereal as it goes into the box at the packaging plant. So that's where a lot of people are getting their B12 from, because their bodies are not capable of making it, because they're eating garlic or they got other things going on in their lives, too much stress, because stress just blows through B12. So they're not taught about testing their B12 as a vegan, as a raw vegan, or testing their vitamin D. I call it D+, and people say, why whenever you write vitamin D, do you always put a plus sign after the D? Well, Dave knows, but a lot of people don't know. The reason why the plus sign is there, and I'm the only one who uses the plus sign after the D, is because sunshine doesn't make just vitamin D in your skin. Oh no, right? It makes a whole bunch of other nutrients that do not come from food, and you can't get them in supplement form. Oh no, now what do we do if we're living in Canada or living in upstate New York and during the winter when the sun isn't strong enough? All right, relax. There's workarounds for just about everything. And that's another thing that I specialize in, is workarounds so that we can be as healthy as our bodies are capable of being. So we can be a number 10. You get a phototherapy device. It's a little light box, about that tall, that wide, and it just mimics the wavelength of the sun, the UVB rays, not the UVA rays that harm you and age your skin, just the UVB rays. See, here's where technology can actually provide a device which is not an improvement on Mother Nature, but allows it to give you what Mother Nature can't if you're living not near the equator, which is where we were supposed to live. So now you're living up in Canada, upstate New York, or whatever, places in Europe where you can't get strong enough sunshine all year round, blah, blah, blah. So you just get a phototherapy device. Now you'll get enough D and all the plus, all that the plus, includes, those other nutrients, which some of them are now being found to be more important to the immune system than vitamin D. And we all know how important vitamin D is to the immune system. So, and how do I come to these conclusions or realizations? How do I discover this stuff? It's very simple. I just sit there on the couch and I think about things. Well, what about are there any nutrients that don't come from food? Well, it turns out, yes, there are. And then one day I asked, hey, all right, I'm learning all about vitamin D and how important it is. Is it the only thing that sunshine makes? Let me just see in case it makes other things. It doesn't seem like it does because I've read all these articles. Now I have access to the internet and I don't see anything other than vitamin D. Get out in the sunshine and between 10 and 2, be careful, blah, blah, blah. Vitamin D, but they don't mention anything else. Let me go see. So I find out, oh my God, it makes other things that don't come from any food and you can't get them in supplement form. So people who are just following advice of raw vegan educators, the ones that do talk about vitamin D, they'll say, all right, well, get your vitamin D during your summer, and then you live in New York, don't worry about it. You'll make enough to carry you through the winter, the months where the sunshine isn't strong enough to make vitamin D in your skin. Well, first of all, that's not normal for human beings. That's another thing. I pass things by the nature test. In nature, we were getting vitamin D, strong enough sunshine to make vitamin D all year round. But then we started roaming away from the equatorial regions to regions farther north. So, that's what happens. We're no longer living in our biological eco niche. And whenever you're not living in your biological eco niche, now you really got to start thinking about, all right, is there anything special I have to be doing to compensate for the fact that A, I'm not living in my biological eco niche, B, I'm eating foods that nature is not growing for me. They're being grown by agri-industry, and agri-industry grows for yield and appearance and size and growth rate and pest resistance and shelf life and sugar content, but they're not growing for nutritional content except for 2 nutrients, and they only have to put those 2 in, or because if they don't, nothing will grow, and they can't grow crop after crop after crop after crop, and they want to be able to grow crop after crop after crop on the same soil because they're growing stuff to make profit. That's their main goal, profit. So they're not going to put back anything into the soil that they don't absolutely have to do. And we now know what the 3 things that have to go back into the soil: NPK, nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus. But they're not putting back in sodium, they're not putting in iodine, they're not putting all the other things in. So that's why it is possible for raw vegans to bump up against nutritional insufficiencies unless you grow all your own food on soil that you know to be really, really good. How many people out there are doing that? Raise your hands. I don't see any hands going up.
Yeah. So it's a lost art of critical thinking and logical thinking, and we appreciate you, Don, doing it and helping encourage others to do it. So where do you think this cognitive dissonance comes from? Because you do see a lot of folks, and maybe it's a romantic notion of, they start to eat foods from nature and fruits and vegetables, and they think, oh, this is so beautiful. I have this romantic notion. I would love to get everything I need just from nature. And is that what's going on, or how can people that are supposedly, you know, um, so knowledgeable and experienced, how are they missing the points that you're raising here? What do you think's going on where people say, you know what, let's just dismiss the vitamin D issue and kind of brush over it, or the vitamin B12 issue, or some of these other supplements or vitamins.
Well, most people, if you don't know something and you want to start pursuing it, you want to try and find someone that will be a teacher, someone you can follow and that gives you the information you need. Now, nowadays, you can just bring up an AI chatbot and keep your fingers crossed that it knows the things that I know, because a lot of things that I know aren't on the internet, and that's where chatbots learn from, is the internet. So there's a potential sore point there with AI chatbots. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to learn. I mean, you go to a school to learn certain things. You pick certain classes in college to learn certain things that you want to know, that you need to know for what you want to do in life, etc. So if you want to start learning about diet and lifestyle practices, well, you find someone to learn from. And so that's fine. But the problem comes in is when that person is themselves miseducated. I won't even get into if you have the misfortune to find someone who's a charlatan, who appears to be, very caring and nice, but they're actually just out for profit. So they're going to teach things that maximize their profit, not your health. Those are, fortunately, they're the exception, not the rule. And the
Okay.
rule is a lot of very well-intentioned, well-meaning people who just had the misfortune to be miseducated by somebody who was miseducated by somebody. And, that's why I say you learn as a researcher, not as a student, because we have way more people out there teaching about raw vegan diets who have been miseducated than have been totally 100% properly educated to
Wow.
know, about all the nutrition, how to get it enough of all, which is an expression of mine. How do you get enough of all of the nutrients that we require for optimal health? And you don't want to be learning from someone who has certain biases. There are people who don't want to believe that we need to take nutritional supplements. There are people who are opposite that. That's what they were taught. We don't need nutritional supplements. Then when I present what I present to them, they go, oh, it appears that we do. They can handle it more like Mr. Spock, very logically, critical thinking skills, caring about their health, and they don't have any, biases. But there are some people who have a bias. No, I believe this person when he says we don't need them and they're just a ripoff and it's a scam. It's a conspiracy. They're conspiring to fill us with all these supplements that we don't need that bring our health down. They buy into that. So when they meet me, they just write me off as one of those conspiracy people, or I'm selling. You know how many people just assume I sell the supplements I talk about?
Don doesn't sell any supplements. So just for the listener, just so you understand.
Right. So where's the motivation for me recommending them as highly as I do if I don't sell them? And I chose not to sell them. I could have. Other people do, and they make lots of money doing it. And people have told me, no, you talk about good supplements, so why not sell them? You should make some money. Because there are people who, once they realize I sell them, are going to assume, and understandably so, that I'm just selling it to make money. And it's just all BS that I'm saying. So I figured if I don't sell it, what are they going to say? That's not an affiliate link. So now what are they going to say? What else could be my reason for recommending it as highly as I do, other than, oh, maybe it is helpful. Maybe he is making sense. And then they read an article. They understand how the agri industry works and how they grow for profit, not for nutritional value, etc. And then they read the article about the 7 different raw vegan diets. They read an article that I wrote about how and why people fail on the raw vegan diet because they're just not getting enough of all. And yeah, so I talk about the big 3 nutrients that are the most problematic for raw vegans is D and B12, as we spoke about before, but iodine is the other one. It's normally supposed to be a food-provided nutrient. So why can't we, even with a really good supplement like Daily Green Boost, it's a green powder you add in that helps you get enough of all the other vitamins and minerals, but even that doesn't supply nearly enough iodine, just because it's so difficult to get iodine into agri-industry, into agricultural growing. You can find it in nature, but none of us are eating directly from nature, or we're living somewhere where there's very poor iodine content of the soils. So that's a hiccup. So D, B12, and iodine are the big three, which accounts for people failing to thrive on a raw vegan diet, or even on a typical Western diet, although they're getting, where are they getting their iodine from? From using table salt. They're sprinkling iodized table salt on everything they eat. Okay, so that's how they're getting their iodine from. But I don't know too many raw vegans who are sprinkling table salt on everything they eat. They usually don't use table salt. Okay, so now where are they getting their iodine from? Unless you know about it, you might have to supplement on that specifically, and maybe D and B12. So that's why I've called those 3 the big 3. They're the most problematic nutrients.